Hi everyone and welcome. In this video I'll show you how to cast on, set up your magic loop and how to knit and purl whilst doing the magic loop. This video is part of a step-by-step visual playlist for my Snowball Mittens pattern. I'll link to the pattern below. These videos are meant as a visual guide only, so make sure you have the written pattern in front of you while watching. I won't be mentioning any stitch counts or exact measurements in the video because those depend on which size you're making. So whenever I say things like cast on your stitches, please just refer to the pattern and follow the number of stitches for your size. This tutorial is perfect if you're a complete beginner. I'll go slowly and you can pause or rewind whenever you want to. Or you can slow it down to 0.5 or whatever you prefer. So let's get started. So before we begin, to know how many to cast on, you have to read in the pattern. Now I've gotten a few questions of how do you know which number to follow. So you look at the top where it says sizes, and if you're following the adult pattern, there's 4 different sizes: X, S, S, M and L. So let's say you're knitting the S, the small. That's the second one. So throughout the pattern, you'll always follow the second number whenever there's 4 different numbers. Okay, now we're ready to get started on the actual cast on. So I've got my yarn, which I am here using Fritidsgarn by Sandnesgarn, and I've got my 7mm circular needles. You can use whatever length you have at hand. I would say it needs to be at least 60 centimeters long. These are 80, which is my preferred for magic loop. So I'm gonna give myself a long thread, approximately 3 times the length of the mitten in this case. And then I'm gonna make a loop. So I've got my yarn here, and then I've got the thread towards me. So to get started, I'm going to make a simple loop like this, and then I'm going to thread that on my needle and tighten it. That's the first stitch. And then to make the second stitch, I like to hold my yarn like this. You can use any cast on method you'd like, just make sure you do it loosely so that you can actually get your hand in and it doesn't felt too tight. So hold your yarn like this. I wrap it around my index finger and my thumb, and then I put the needle through it like this, and that creates a loop. Okay, once more, and 3 stitches. And that is how you make the rest of the stitches. The first one was was by creating a little loop, and the rest is just the same, like this. And you can slow down the video if you'd like, pause it, and I'll show you once more slowly. Make sure to keep your yarn this way, so hold it like this, through this one, and like this. So casting on for magic loop is no different than casting on for if you were knitting in the round or knitting back and forwards. So just continue casting on until you have the required number of stitches for your sides. Now you can count whilst you're casting on, but make sure to just double check and count your stitches afterwards too. So now I've accidentally cast on 21 stitches and I only needed 20. So there we go. So once you've cast on the required number of stitches, we're gonna start on the magic loop. So we're gonna divide the stitches evenly for magic loop. That just means you're gonna put half the stitches on this needle and half the stitches on this needle. So for me, that's gonna be 10 on each one, but for you, it might be a different number. So, sorry, we're going a bit faster. So first you find your middle. This is my middle. And then I just let these stitches sit. And then I take these stitches and just pull the cable until they end up on my needle, and I just drag them on top of my needle like this, and then I make sure it's not twisted. You can see it's if it's twisted, this will be like turned, but as you can see, it looks right. I've got little V's on this side and same on this side, so it looks good, although you can't twist it 2 times, so just it's here, you can see if it's twisted or not, but as you can see, mine is not. So now we're going to get started on the actual knitting. We're going to be knitting in 1 by 1 rib, where we're going to knit 1 and purl 1. So I'm going to take my yarn, and I like to lay it over the needle that's furthest away from me, like this. And then I'm going to pull this needle so that I still have a bit of cable left. Don't pull it so that it's completely pulled to the max. Just leave a little loop, and then have a little loop on this side, and then I'm just going to knit as I normally would when knitting in a round. So the first stitch is a knit stitch, so you go into the loop. The first one can be a bit difficult, and the first round is a bit difficult if it's your first time, but I'll take it slow. So that's a knit stitch. Now the next stitch will be a purl stitch, so I'll put my yarn over my needle like this, put my right needle through, wrap the yarn around, and that's 1 purl. So now we've done 1 by 1 rib 1 time. So it's going to continue like this all the way around. Knit, purl, knit, purl. Let me show you slowly a knit stitch. And slowly a purl stitch. And now I have 2 stitches left of my needle. There's nothing different about the last 2 stitches on this half. So I'm just going to knit 1 and purl 1. Now that I have now knit half the stitches, and I'm gonna need to pull on the cable and just put my stitches back through like this. So I've worked these stitches, and now I want to work these stitches, so I'll turn my work like this, and then it's just the exact same thing again. I'll place my yarn like this to not make it too loose or too tight. I'll pull my needle, and I've got a little loop here, a little loop here, and then I just knit the first stitch. So it's just going to be knitting one, purling one, all the way around, and these are my 2 last stitches, and once I've done that I have worked every stitch once. So now it's just the same, where you pull the cable and get your stitches back on the needle, and make sure to not use this thread when you knit. I've done that a lot as a beginner, but you might have, you can see there's a small gap here, hold on. That's just because you cast on, and that's normal. You might have quite a long thread here, but once you knit a few rounds, that'll even itself out, and it's completely fine, especially in this case where we'll be felting, so you don't have to be too worried about it. And again, make sure nothing's twisted. And then you just continue that way until you're done with the ribbing. And there's nothing special really about working magic loop and stockinette stitch, is the exact same. But I will show you that just for the visual learners out there. So now that I'm here, I'll be putting my stitches back on, turn around, and then pull this out and just continue knitting as you normally would in the round. So it might take you a few tries if this is your first time ever knitting, and or is the first time ever doing the magic loop, but just rewind the video and or slow it down if you need. And it is very similar to knitting in the round. It's just this part of moving your cable and moving your stitches back on the needle and turning around. That is the different part. Now I'll also just show you, if you don't know how many rows you've knit so far in the ribbing, you can easily count these little circles. Is the easiest, I would say. So 1, 2, that means I've done 2 rows. And if I turn my work around, I've also done 2 here. And you can see this is what we cast on, and so this is the beginning. If you'd like, you can take a stitch marker and mark the first stitch in case you find it difficult to remember. But you do have this thread and the natural divide of the magic loop, which shows you the first stitch. If you count the little V's, you will see there's 3, but that is because you cast on, and that will look like a little V. So there's 2 little dots from the purlers, so that means I've knit 2 rounds, and I'm just going to continue in the amount of rounds that the pattern calls for in my size. Now let me know if there's any questions about this part in the comments below. Now done with my ribbing, and I'll be working in stocking stitch for a certain amount of round. You will find that in the pattern depending on your size. So there's nothing magic about that. It's the same as before. You knit the first stitch and then you just continue knitting every stitch instead of purling every other. So just like this. And if you need a reminder for how to do the knit stitches, just rewind the video to when we were doing knit 1, purl 1, and watch the knit stitches. But I'm sure you probably got the hang of it now. So I'll just knit a few rounds like this, and then we'll be starting on the thumb increases. now that I've knit one round, this is what it looks like. Again, if you count on your knit row, it will look like you have done more rows than you actually have because of the cast on. So remember that this is your cast on if you are now counting stitches, and then you go 1, 2, 3. I done 4 for the ribbing, and then I have done 1 row in stocking stitch where I've just been knitting every stitch. So just continue like this, and then we are ready for the next part. Now let's say that you have been knitting around in stocking stitch and you don't really know how many rounds you've done. So to count the rows, you count these little V's that you can see. So this is one V, this is another, and so on. So I find it easiest to start counting from one of the rows where there is a where you've been purling. So I know that this kind of halfway, that's part of the purl stitch, just like there is down below. So this is not the first one, but this is the first one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So I know I've knit 7 rows so far. Whenever you are knitting and you're starting to knit quite a lot of rows, like for me there's not that many because I'm knitting a children's size, but you can use these little stitch markers to save yourself the trouble of counting from the bottom every time. If you don't have stitch markers, you can use just a piece of thread or an earring, anything really that you can mark. Also, if you find it confusing about what's the first stitch, you could always just mark it like this, and you know that's the first stitch. Right. That was all for the first part of the video, and just keep watching the playlist for the next part.